Now I'm calling the meeting to order, 7:06 on October 20th. Welcome everyone to the Commission on Sustainability, Environmental Justice, and the Environment. I was holding off a little bit to wait for our last member, but I'm not sure where he is, so I think we might as well get going here. So first off is the roll call. Why don't we just go around the room and everybody say your name and your affiliation?
Aditi Buskeeth, OSC staff.
James Conway, Office of Sustainability.
Jean Laurie, Friends of Sunset Park.
David Pettit, Commissioner.
Alex Tower, Commissioner, Vice Chair.
Dean Kubani, Chair of the Commission.
Olivia Walker, Commissioner.
Ginger and Judy Abdo, visitor to the commission.
Department of Transportation Assistant Director. Susan Compliments, Vehicle Maintenance Superintendent. David Andrews, Transit Maintenance Administrator.
Great.
Fiona Dubay, OSC Civic Spark Valley.
Devin Cipher, Santa Monica Daily Press.
Mikey Khan, UCLA Bicycle Academy.
Lindsay Call, Office of Emergency Management, City Staff.
All right, and all right, just in time.
Just in time. Except I can't find my little.
It's over there on the table.
Well, I wanted to note before we start everything, we have one addition to our agenda tonight. It's not we're not being asked to take any action, so I'm allowing Lindsay to talk to us. Lindsay will be presenting. Sorry, Lindsay Call will be presenting about the local hazard mitigation plan update. So we'll do that item directly after the first special agenda item, which is Eric O'Connor's item, if nobody has any problems with that. Okay, so do we have any public input on any agendized items? Seeing none, do we have any public input on agendized items? Huh? Seeing none, we're just going to go to our first special agenda item, which is Santa Monica Department of Transportation Road to Zero Emissions presentation. Eric O'Connor, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Eric O'Connor. I'm the Assistant Director of the Department of Transportation. We manage the Big Blue Bus fleet of transit vehicles. A little background about our agency: the City of Santa Monica's Big Blue Bus provides service in an urban service area of 51 square miles, which far exceeds the Santa Monica's municipal boundaries of 8.6 square miles. BBB is a municipal operator for the west side region of LA, serving our community currently with 17 routes, and we provide more than 10 million rides a year. Service is funded entirely by farebox revenue and state and federal subsidies. No monies from the city's general fund are used by our department. We employ over 500 full-time employees represented by numerous unions and bargaining units. The operating budget is over $120 million, and our capital budget ranges from $20 to $40 million annually. The department has 195 fixed route buses currently in its fleet, and which includes 34 battery electric buses as of this year. Our journey to converting to zero emission fleet started back in 2016 when the City Council adopted the Zero Carbon 2030 Fleet Plan and directed us to undertake the landmark process to convert the fleet to zero emissions ahead of the state of California's mandate date of 2040. This plan directs us to buy 100% zero emission vehicles for its transit fleet, allowing for the full transition to zero emissions without any early retirement of our vehicles. The service life of vehicles is 12 years. This plan is intended to be a living document, which is subject to change as technology in the buses and the infrastructure matures. The first thing that we did in development of a plan was to award a contract to our engineering firm to develop a master plan to get to our ultimate goal of zero emissions by 2030. We awarded this contract in 2019 and completed the master planning effort in 2021. Concurrently, we filed for a FTA exemption to prototype and purchase a 40-foot coach in late 2018 to evaluate real-time performance of a bus, not what was advertised by the manufacturers. We wanted to make sure that the real performance of the bus could operate within our system. One of the main challenges that our master planning effort had to contend with was our current yard space constraints. Our yard is only 9.6 acres. We have 3 buildings on that, including a 20-bay maintenance facility. And on top of it, we have to park 195 vehicles, ranging from 35 to 60 feet on our 9.6 acres every night. What we ultimately developed was a plan that accommodated our current vehicle configuration and bus flow with the overhead charging dispenser approach to maximize land use. In addition, the master plan will keep the existing CNG system on site until 2032, when the fleet is fully converted to zero emissions. And it also keeps the facility, most importantly, operational during the entire process, and it requires no changes to the buildings on site. Probably the most important part of our master planning effort was where it all started with route modeling. Essentially, we wanted to make sure that the 2021 bus technology and real performance of those buses would perform on all the blocks and runs. Route modeling evaluated all kinds of factors within our system, including traffic patterns and speed, topography, weather, bus performance, etc. The engineering firm from Montreal that was leading this route modeling effort, their name is Qtrix. With some minor tweaks to our schedules, we were able to validate our current models of our 444 kilowatt buses would work within our system. This modeling effort then allowed us and our engineers to develop a charging profile to estimate daily power and energy requirements that would help eventually further our design efforts. The master plan will be a phased approach, like I mentioned earlier, which will allow us flexibility as technology advances and allow the department to maintain our operations. Additionally, the phased approach allows us to take advantage of funding when it comes available, and then it'll also help us smooth our cash flow commitment. At completion, the yard will have 45 individual charging cabinets to be grouped together in 3 charging yards around the perimeter of the property, overhead steel frames structure to hold the overhead mounted dispensers, electrical utility service equipment and distribution, a portable generator hookup, connection to the main switchboards, bollards and other means of protection of the canopy structure, and of course new concrete pavements and markings and stripings within our yard. Once all the phases are completed, we'll be bringing in 7.7 megawatts into our yard. The first phase of the master plan was completed in 2021 during our master planning effort. In the first phase, we installed 20 conjoined chargers that have the ability to fully charge buses in 4.5 hours. They're delivering energy at 125 kilowatts. The buses were commissioned, and additionally, we purchased 18 40-foot buses during that year, and those were commissioned by May of that year. The prototype bus that we've had on site in 2018 was also retrofitted to the same specifications of the second generation Gillig buses that were received that year. The back-end software on the chargers also help us monitor the state of charges on buses, bus health, and bus location in the yard. The next 5 phases is what we're on right now. And those bids actually came in last week, and we selected a vendor It's going to be Royal Electric. We're taking that to council on November 18th, so we hit a huge milestone. Our intent is to have construction permits ready to go by no later than the end of this calendar year. Phases 2 through 4 will give us the ability to charge the rest of our fleet of 195 buses. This design will allow us to, again, phase the construction of the catenary structure, allowing us to maintain our operations. Another feature of the design of the buses is the ability to stack parking as we do already in the yard. And it will minimize the span of our canopy, reducing the capital outlay cost. To achieve the stack parking, we will buy buses that provide charging access points in both the front and the rear of the buses. So what's neat about this is we mirrored up the design of the buses to the design of the canopy structure. So our canopy structure only has to cover the last 10 feet of the bus and the first 10 feet of the bus, because we're buying buses with charge points both in the front and the back. So we've minimized the capital cost by innovative engineering in our buses. Additionally, we purchased 15 35-foot buses this year, and they're in service. The buses, by the way, from a performance standpoint, are performing as well, if not better, than our CNG buses, which we're very happy about. Some more slides. Those are renderings of what we're building. So none of this would be possible without securing the funding to build out this infrastructure. The 2040 and the 2030 mandate by the city was an unfunded mandate. So we've been, the team at DOT has been working equally hard on not only the master planning, but the design effort, but also lobbying and applying for every grant opportunity that came to our attention. Proudly, I'll say to date that we've been able to secure over $77 million from grantors, mainly at the state level. We also have received a charge-ready transportation grant from SCE, so we're very happy about that. So SCE has been a great partner. Equally important, as I just mentioned, are the partnerships that we established over the last few years in getting to this point, and undoubtedly going forward will be immensely valuable in successfully delivering the next 4 or 5 phases. We've been partnering with SCE, and we've been on weekly, bi-weekly calls through the entire design process over the last 3 years, so they know exactly what we're doing. They know what they have to deliver on their side of the switch as well, and the infrastructure upgrades. Gillig, our bus manufacturer, from piloting their very first electric bus, the very first bus that they ever manufactured back starting in 2018, has to now successfully running 34 battery electric buses on a daily basis, has been a tremendous partner to work with. Other partnerships have been driving the successes of our projects as well. Partnerships with ChargePoint, a Northern California company, provides our chargers. We have service level agreements to provide maintenance support and warranty on all the chargers. Our downtime on chargers is like slim to none, which is unbelievable. So we've had a lot of luck. Stantec Engineering, our engineering team of record since basically 2020, 21, has been great to work with, and Wildan Engineering, who provides construction management and inspection services, have been great partners to work with. Since the battery electric buses have been in operation, we have seen that our decision to use a legacy bus builder, Gillig, has resulted in reducing the impacts on drivers and mechanics, since approximately 80% of the bus is the same as a CNG bus. Our mechanics, it looks familiar to them. Our operators, it looks familiar to them. The technology on the buses has allowed us to track issues in real time, and we have experienced that electric buses prove to be just as reliable as our CNG fleet, and actually our operators love the buses. Some of the early lessons learned have been the following. You can never plan enough and develop contingency plans within your planning process. Make sure you develop a well thought out plan and a schedule by working with a cross-sectional team from your organization to develop the plan. A team that includes internal staff from safety and training, vehicle and facilities maintenance, planning, and operations. These subject matter experts will help you eliminate risk as you head down the road. I don't know how many ideas have come out of these cross-sectional teams where somebody just says something and you have that aha moment, and it's saving us a tremendous amount of time and money over this whole process, and undoubtedly during construction. You need to work early on with your third parties as well, like the city's building department, Public Works Department, the fire department, and the police departments. They all have their individual concerns, as you can well imagine, about the new technology that you're about to deploy, and we have deployed. We've developed strong working relationships and agreements with our OEMs for post-delivery vehicle and charger support, and we've set our expectations as an agency and a city early on with those OEMs, so we all have that high-level understanding of what we expect out of them, the downtime, the time that they get to respond to service needs. We also invested in vehicle monitoring software to track bus performance in the state of charge. We've provided high voltage safety training equipment for staff and facilities personnel, and we've gotten an early jump on training for bus operators, mechanics in particular, is operating and maintaining the new buses. And now that we have the 34 buses, we subsequently monitor the performance of the buses during the day, because operators can affect the performance on how, depending on how they drive them. So we monitor that, and we retrain drivers as necessary. And then finally, the community benefits of the battery electric buses are really in the to the customers in the community are clear. The new buses provide a cleaner, quieter, and smoother trip for our customers and for our employees that are driving it as well. So that's the end of the presentation. I'm here to answer questions. I have David and Jesus here. They can help answer questions. They've been on this path with us, with the department the entire time. And Brian Ochoa, our counterpart that's in Public Works, wasn't able to make it tonight, but we can answer your questions. We're very excited about the project. Like I said, we're taking the award to council on the November 18th meeting. The project timeline is going to be 18 to 24 months once we break grounds. So
Great.
In 24 months, I'm hoping to have the ability to charge the rest of our fleet.
All right. Thank you, Eric. We'll open up questions from commissioners. David.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. I'm wondering if you guys have worked out a rate deal with Edison.
There is, I'm working with CARB, and there is no transit-specific rate, okay? So there are demand charges that we're very aware of, and we're mindful of it, and we've done analysis and we're tracking it. So in comparison to the cost of CNG, because that's a concern. The key for us right now, if we can eliminate the 4 through to 9 p.m. charging in our yard, that's the highest demand charge. If we can eliminate that, we've done the analytics behind it and we've studied it. The actual cost of charging our buses, and majority of our buses get charged overnight. So, but right now I'm charging 35 buses with 20 chargers, so I can't avoid that 4 to 8 period. But when I have enough chargers, dispensers, to plug in all the buses, we can lock out that 4 to 8, 9 period with the charging software, so we don't charge and we won't draw. And the bottom line is, if we can lock out that 4 to 9 p.m. period, the cost of energy is in line with CNG. What we're paying for CNG.
So I'm guessing from what you said that you could plug a bus in, say at 3:30 and tell it don't charge until 10.
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna lock. My goal is to lock it out. That we're not drawing anything during that highest demand charge period. We're already mindful of that. But again, we're also going to start lobbying, and I've been talking about it, but my focus is, getting this project, shovel ready and the grants secured. But the next step is to start talking about transit specific rate, statewide.
Great.
On the new project where the charging is, was there any consideration of doing maybe like a solar canopy there as well?
That's the last phase of the project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we plan on applying for grants.
Okay, great.
To make it pencil out and put a solar canopy on. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I missed that.
That was actually in line with the question that I have. I noticed in your plans that you have PV panels on top of those canopies. They're only 10 feet wide or 20 feet wide. Will that be enough surface area for the PV to actually take a chunk out of your SCE bill?
It's going to be enough to offset some of the costs of our buildings. It would never even begin to even charge one bus. Honestly. But it will be helpful. We'll be putting it back into our buildings, our maintenance shop, our admin building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Absolutely.
Great.
That's our thought process.
Rob, do you have any questions?
Great presentation. Great project.
Thank you.
Is there any benefit from selling power back to the grid during the 4 through 9 period and then getting it back late at night, or that just doesn't make any sense?
I think we'll be drawing all that solar power into our buildings.
No, I meant from the buses. You charge them up to 9, they drive around. Not all of them are going to come back zero.
No, but you bring up a good point that I didn't mention. The other thing that we've done with our 15 buses that we purchased this year, our first 20 buses were 444 kilowatt hours. So another big concern in the electrification going this route with our fleet is resiliency. And battery storage was one option, but battery storage would never begin to, we would never be able to store enough energy to provide the resiliency that we need. So what we have done is our new buses have, they're higher density batteries to start with. But our new buses we put a 7th battery pack on it. And it's 688 kilowatts versus 444. So the thought process there is I put battery storage on the bus. So we're going to charge it, and what that'll do, our CNG buses, a full CNG bus, you get 2 days worth of operations on it. A 688 kilowatt bus should give us about 2 days worth of operations.
Okay.
So we should be able to run those buses in excess. We have been running those buses in the high 200 mile range, almost 300 and over 300 miles. So that gives us a resiliency built in to our fleet, because if the power grid goes down, you don't fuel your buses, you can't provide transit service. And the other thing we've studied is we've gone back like a few decades to see if there's been an outage of like more than 24 hours with SCE, and we couldn't find it. And SCE helped us out with that. So knock on wood, that won't happen, but at least we'll have a reserve fleet. In most of our fleet, if a power outage goes down, we'll have enough to run in a full day's worth of operations.
What's the length distribution of your routes?
We planned our system on, it varies depending on blocks and runs, but we planned our buses to run on average 140, 160 miles a day. Okay. So that's what they go out and run, but it varies depending on what routes they're on, topography and things like that. But the mileage, we planned it around 160. So our 444 kilowatt hours buses, the older buses from 2021, they can service that, but we wanted to have 300 plus miles on it, so we have extra days worth of running in case of a service disruption.
What are the drivers like the buses?
Well, they don't shift. So they don't have to shift. As you can imagine, our drivers are out there 12 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. So they don't shift, they don't have to apply the gas hard. So it's easier on their knees, their hips, their back, and they don't have to brake as hard because there's regenerative braking. In fact, we ask our drivers to take, just get off the gas and let the regenerative brakes do the work because that recharges the system. So that's how we train our drivers to drive the buses. And they're not as noisy. So, you can actually, if you've been on one of our buses, I do tours of, other agencies. SCE, the executive team was out getting a tour of this presentation and a tour of our facility and our buses. We took them out, and everybody's really impressed when they get on the bus and they can actually talk to somebody on the bus. You're not yelling and screaming. You can have a conversation in a normal tone. So that's and that's what the customers like too. The jerkiness is gone, and what else did the operators like, guys? I mean, I think that
usually you say drive-by throttle is linked to what Eric was alluding to is mainly just using the throttle to operate the vehicle, and when you come to a stop, you kind of regenerate, so we actually calculate the distance and the speed, and the vehicle can come down to a mile per hour, since maybe a stop to where a point where the driver has to just slightly up and brake. And so obviously, like he said earlier, good on the knees, good on the hips, good on the back. So drivers love them so much that we were asking to bring them back to our yard and plug them into the charger, but they're so excited to bring that bus back out to service that they go out there and plug it in themselves. So you guys really want to bring this bus back to service. That's how excited they are. It's real quiet, it's fun to work with, and a lot cleaner.
And they like the acceleration too.
Right. Go ahead, Judy.
You mentioned that the lifespan of the,
You're next.
or the service, what do you call it? Oh, I have to put my eyes on, pardon me.
The service life of
The
buses.
service lifespan of the vehicle is 12 years. Does that include these new electric
Yes.
buses?
The
Oh, wow.
FTA requires us to keep the buses in service for 12 years.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's a requirement.
Okay.
We have buses because of, I would love to have had another 30 buses. We have another 30 buses on order right now that we're probably going to take delivery in early middle of 27. And then we're planning to go to council later this year for another 33 buses. So late 27, early 28 for the Olympics. And if we get all that done, the infrastructure built, we'll have half of our bus fleet that'll be battery electric before the Olympics.
That's
To give
awesome.
you a benchmark on where Metro is at, because they're getting some heat for this right now. We have 18% of our fleet battery electric right now. And I'm not trying to throw Metro under the bus because a lot of our funding comes from Metro. They're at 3%. And they're going to be nowhere near the goal of 50% by the Olympics. And we're hoping to be there.
That's great. Judy?
I don't know how long you've worked for the city, but okay. I used to be on the city council, and when I was on the city council, they taught us all to drive buses. And we drove around the parking lot of the Civic, right? That it was a huge parking lot at the time, but we learned how to drive them. And so the appreciation for the buses and the bus drivers was really, really heavy. And, we had to learn how to back up the bus and park it. That's not an easy thing to do. And I just wondered if you had ever thought about having the council learn how to drive an electric bus.
No. We already have enough problems keeping our buses off of fixed objects when they're out on route. So no, we haven't. We haven't.
All right. I had a couple last questions, and then I'll let you go. And thank you for a great presentation. Have you looked at the cost of overall operations for the battery electric buses versus the CNG buses?
We're monitoring it right now.
Oh, you are?
It's fairly early on but you know, from a PM, a preventive maintenance program standpoint, I was just talking to the guys, and we're gonna have to, you know, do some work with our mechanic workforce. But the PMs on preventive maintenance on an electric bus, you know, we have different PM programs based on the mileage. We cycle the PM. They're constantly working on PMs, whether it's CNG bus or electric bus. Technically, it should be, the PM should take considerably less time.
Right.
Yeah. And even though right now my mechanics tend to take as much time on the electric buses as the CNG buses, but we know that, you know, it does require less time. So to, you know, go through all their check.
Right. That would be interesting we'd love to hear about that down the road, and I'm sure the folks at OSE would want to hear about that too.
We monitor all that, and like I said we're concerned about the fuel costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just from my own experience with an electric car versus other stuff. I've seen and obviously we're talking apples and oranges here because buses are in service all day long, but our electric vehicle is significantly cheaper to operate, both in, you know, electricity costs, but also even more so in avoided maintenance because there's hardly anything to break.
The one thing that concerns me, and we haven't, no one's asked it yet, but it came up in a prior presentation, and we've been thinking about this too, is the cost of battery replacements, because that's very, very expensive. Each one of these battery packs are costing us $70,000 a piece on this bus, and there's 7. So and they're only in warranty for 6 years.
Oh.
You gotta keep this bus running for 12. So that midlife could be extremely expensive. The good news is in 4 years since we've had our 2021 buses, or 3+ years, we haven't seen any battery degradation. So no one really knows how long these batteries will last. So
You're guinea pigs.
We're out there with this. So
great.
But the buses do cost about 20% more to buy. About $250,000 more a bus. So that is also a concern too.
Right.
Is that with the batteries?
The 7 batteries, everything.
Probably.
Our current cost, we just got a new quote for the 33 buses, the second order, $1.6 million each. And the CNG bus is about what would you say, David, 1.15, 1.2?
CNG were more like $900,000.
Yeah. So significantly.
Right.
Yeah. We do get a HFIB rebate as long as that doesn't go away. It's $150,000, but that helps us a little bit. But yeah, we have to factor that in. And tariffs aren't helping us right now at all.
Right.
And everything else.
Got it. And the other question I had was about funding. You mentioned there was federal funding on one of your slides. Is that going away, or has that gone away? And how much are you relying on that?
We're relying on it heavily because we get anywhere from $8 to $12 million for bus replacements a year.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not going away, to our knowledge right now, but who knows with this administration.
Right. Okay. And the other thing on funding.
The good news is we have health reserves,
Mhm.
so that'll
Right.
help us along the way, but then we're going to need it really quick.
So how much of this master plan that you have is funded, and how much is to be funded?
We have the last canopy that's unfunded right now, but we've been lobbying. Knock on wood, Caltrans and the TIRCP programs have been very good to us. And part of our thought was, let's be early adopters of this. Let's show our lobbyists, let's show Caltrans, let's show the director at Caltrans that we're committed, but also more importantly, a lot of agencies aren't delivering. We're delivering, so we can go in and say, hey, we got our plans. We're going to break grounds in November. We're going to, so we've been lobbying for years, and we've been showing with our phase 1 completion, with the purchase of 34 buses, with our master planning effort. I bring these the plans with me at the state level when we're up in Sacramento. I go back to Washington, D.C. and give these presentations. We haven't gotten any federal funds, but at the state level, we've gotten the last 2 rounds of TIRCP, and there is another grant opportunity, should be next year. So we're going to ask for the balance of our last canopy. And
Fantastic.
So, that was our plan, our strategy.
That's great. Well, very impressive program. Any other questions before we?
No problem.
This goes to something I read about, and I just don't know how pie in the sky it is, where in Sweden they have these bus systems where they drive over certain roads, and the road is designed to recharge the bus. And I wonder how far, like, is that anything that Santa Monica's looked at? Is it something that's just super pie in the sky right now, or?
I was director of project management and finance for the Exposition Construction Authority. So knowing how difficult it is to work in a right of way, in not only in the city, but also most of 80% of our service area is outside the city limits. It would be tremendously hard to do. But saying that, UCLA is trying to do that in like a couple of blocks of campus. And I don't know how effective they're going to be, so it'll be interesting to see what they're doing. The other thing that in-route charging we've looked at too, and depot charging at like the transit center and LAX. So we're doing opportunity charging where it makes sense. And I think as Metro expands their system, Culver City gets on board, UCLA is doing more of it. I think there's going to be opportunity for partnerships where at the end of lines or at layovers, there's going to be opportunities to either plug in a bus or they have, what am I thinking about, the conductive charging. Panagram, conductive charging. We don't have it on our buses. That's not how our buses are designed, but we're looking at those opportunities as well.
Great. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming out. Fantastic project. Yeah. All right, so now we have Lindsay Call to talk to us about our local hazard mitigation plan updates.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me be a last minute addition, and apologies for miscommunication. Let's see if I can actually. Okay, my name is Lindsay Call. I serve with the Office of Emergency Management, and I've presented to you before as part of the safety element presentation. The Community Development Department updated their safety element discussing local hazards in February 2025. That was this year. This year's been strange. But this is a complementary plan. So first, my team, currently, I'm within the city manager's office. We'll see if that's still the case by the end of the week. But we are 2 different divisions: Public Safety Communications, which is 911 dispatch for police, fire, and EMS services in the city. And then Emergency Services and Preparedness. We are responsible for running the Emergency Operations Center during disaster events or local protests and things like that. As well as overall citywide emergency planning and response efforts. So this planning effort has been our team's. So the hazard mitigation plan is really focused on raising awareness for the local risks and hazards within our community. We take a comprehensive look at the core hazards for the city and then identify what are the mitigation action items that we want to undertake to reduce that risk and really try to move the needle for the city when it comes to mitigation and disaster preparedness. We are always trying to do things in the most equitable way. We also looked at social vulnerability index and how that correlated with the hazard maps to identify pockets of our community that would be most susceptible to disaster events, and then use that information as well to craft our mitigation action items. This was not just done by our Office of Emergency Management team. We created a resilience planning committee that was comprised of all of these city departments, as well as valued partners. So our local hospitals, the school districts, Santa Monica College, our business community, nonprofits in the area all participated in this. So it was a whole community effort to understand our hazards and the risk profile, and then work to identify and prioritize mitigation action items. That way everyone has collective buy-in and we can all work together when implementing. It's been a long road for planning process. So this plan is required to be approved by FEMA so that you can get hazard mitigation federal grant funding. So in order to get FEMA's approval, you have to meet a lot of different requirements. So one of the core elements is community participation. And so we conducted a public survey. It was an opt-in, non-random survey to gain feedback from the community. We held several different public workshops in English and Spanish. We engaged our resilience committee, held the public comment period. We are shopping it to various commissions to really make sure that the community has an opportunity to learn about the potential for disaster in Santa Monica, and also provide feedback. But we're nearing the end, so we're on that council adoption pathway. When council adopts, which is slated for November, we will go send the plan to Cal OES. They have to review it to make sure it meets requirements. They'll approve. Hopefully then we'll get FEMA approval, and then we will implement any FEMA revisions. As I described, it's been an interesting road since when we started to now. We've had lots of natural hazards and disaster events occur. So we had Tropical Storm Hillary, which was an interesting event, the Atmospheric River, December's Franklin Fire, and then, of course, the January Palisades and Eden fires. We even threw in a tsunami advisory. So the challenge with these actual events is, number one, we are a very tiny team. For a lot of this, I've been the solo emergency manager for Santa Monica. And so when these events happen, I'm the one doing our forecasting, our response planning, and implementing the recovery measures, especially for Palisades Fire. And then, so the work gets delayed. And then we also have had to try to incorporate these real-time events into the plan. So in January 2025, of course, we had the unprecedented damage to urban areas. In March 2025, the state revised their fire hazard severity maps. And so we had done all of this work, written all of the plans, baked the mitigation action items, but we met with Santa Monica Fire, OEM, Community Development, and really said, we can't submit this plan as is. We need to do some rewrites to really reflect the current history, as well as add mitigation action items that really represent our new wildfire danger. So it's a big book. It's printed in the back. I know we are very tree friendly here, but we wanted to make sure we had paper copies available for the library. So it is lots of words. It's all online as well. 3 different volumes. The first 2 are probably most important. First is our actual mitigation action plan, and it describes what those mitigation action items are for the next 5 years. We give an update for the last mitigation action plan, and it talks about how we're going to maintain it, who is involved in the planning process. Volume 2 has the hazard-specific information for earthquakes, tsunamis, floods, landslides, wildfire, urban fires, climate change and severe weather, hazardous materials management, and airport hazards. These hazards also align with the safety elements hazards so that we had consistency on the technical evaluation. So for all of these hazards, there's historical information, geography information, lots of the technical specifics, as well as some projections that I'll go through in more detail on what potential damage could occur in these events. This is not a response plan, so this is just analysis for the hazards. It does not tell our first responders what to do if the hazard happens. It tells us how we should be prioritizing our planning efforts. And so we do have other response plans, an emergency operations plan, as well as tsunami, peer emergency, civil unrest, alert and warning, yada, yada, yada. And even department-specific plans, like the police department's earthquake protocol or fire department's earthquake protocol. So there are other response plans, but our hazards mitigation plan is important in informing where we should put those efforts. Okay, here comes the doom and gloom. This is our hazard analysis findings, and I will only go into the significant ones. So the greatest risk that we found was for earthquake, tsunami, wildland fire, flood inundation due to dam failure, severe weather, and sea level rise. On the lower risk side, it was coastal flooding, landslide, structure fires, hazardous materials release, and airport crashes. So FEMA has a tool, a risk assessment GIS-based tool called HAZIS that you can use for earthquake, tsunami, hurricane, and flooding events, where you put in your community's information and the type of incident you want to model, and it will give you estimated impacts of economic loss, building damage, fatalities, casualties. So we utilize that for earthquake, tsunamis in our dam inundation scenario. It is not available for wildfire, but we used our damage assessment tool called Crisis Track to estimate potential wildfire building loss. It uses tax assessor data to calculate that. And this is only the data that's presented is only for Santa Monica. So while there may be there are regional impacts to most of these scenarios, it's only looking at the city. Okay, so for earthquake, we looked at 4 different scenarios, a 7.4 on the Santa Monica Fault, a 7.2 earthquake on the Newport Inglewood, 7.7 on the Palos Verdes Fault. That fault line runs through the bay, and that would prompt a local tsunami. And a 7.8 on the San Andreas Fault, which is the most well-known and usually the scenario presented in the California Shakeout drill. Okay, so this is the risk analysis that was provided by HAZIS for our earthquake scenarios. Really, the findings are the most loss is based on where the fault is located. So with the Santa Monica fault line, it runs through our backyard. There would be the greatest amount of shaking within Santa Monica that would cause the most amount of damage, as well as the highest chance for liquefaction or fault rupture damage. As the fault moves, the damage estimates change. The San Andreas Fault, even though it has $33 million of damage versus billions of damage, this is a regional Southern California scenario where even though we may experience less direct building damage or health impacts to our community, it could mean major disruptions for transportation, trade routes, etc. So there could be a secondary wave of impacts on the community. This is just from damage to shaking. we evaluated, or the Houses tool rather, gave us the estimates of damage based on our census blocks. That slide looks very funky up there. But again, it's the direction of where the fault line is and where the movement of shaking would originate from and how it would travel through Santa Monica. We also are mindful of the different social vulnerability concerns within the community. And this is the commercial building loss. This just stresses the importance of our existing program for the seismic retrofit. It is absolutely the best way to prevent building damage and loss of life in a major earthquake. Okay. Tsunami, there are two different sources of tsunami. A local source tsunami is where the earthquake or seismic event occurs nearby and prompts the tsunami within about 10 minutes. Would be when first waves would be arriving on shore. The long-distance tsunami, teletsunami, is what we saw earlier this year, where it is occurring somewhere else in the world, Alaska, Japan, Russia, and then the waves are traveling, where we have hours to prepare, and we know exactly when waves are arriving on shore. I know, it's very upsetting. I've got a 5-month puppy at home. That is perfect behavior. But statewide, this is the statewide tsunami inundation map that looks at a teletsunami originating in Alaska and a 20-foot run-up. The waves would go, stop at the bluffs. This is not the San Andreas movie scenario where the waves go over into Culver City. They would stop at the bluffs. And then flooding also would occur mostly south of the pier in our parks, beach parking lots, and there are some residential condos on the southern edge of the city that would be impacted. The Palos Verdes tsunami scenario is worse on the southern side of the city, but this is the most widely studied and mapped by the state, and there have been lots of conversations about our Palos Verdes scenario, so we're using this to educate folks with. This is the HAZUS analysis. The range of exposed population, casualties, damaged buildings, it takes a look at where are we with preparedness levels. We understand that while our local residents may have a good understanding about earthquakes and tsunamis, tourists may not. And so we wanted to be fair in our preparedness level, since a lot of the evacuations occurring would be for those who don't live in Santa Monica. More good news. So for our flooding event, I'll give some good news. There's not a huge risk for coastal flooding or other areas of flooding within Santa Monica just from normal rainstorms. The biggest risk was from a catastrophic failure of the Stone Canyon Dam, which is located in Bel Air, at the very top of the map. If that has a full failure, which is very unlikely, but could happen, it would flood the entire area in purple, going all throughout West LA, all the way down to Mar Vista and the Marina. Even areas of Culver City would be impacted. This shows a map specific to Santa Monica, where flooding could range from the highest amount towards Centinela is about 12 feet, and it shows the density, how much damage would occur to residential buildings in that area. Same inundation zone, but for commercial buildings. One thing to note on this dam scenario is that it should, per their studies and information, it should be unimpacted by an 8.0 earthquake. And the dam is controlled by City of Los Angeles, DWP. This is the risk analysis using HAZUS, destroying 23 buildings and displacing 464 households in Santa Monica. One thing to note, though, is that Santa Monica would be a place of refuge for everyone seeking shelter from the flooding event in West LA. And so it would be a bit of an island where we would also have to be supporting a lot of our neighboring communities. So before 2025, this was our wildfire hazard map. The pink was our very high hazard zone pre-Palisades fire, and it just conveniently stopped on the Santa Monica border. And that was, and while we all thought, that maybe is a little bit suspicious, we trusted our state experts in that. And there wasn't a lot of historical evidence that the fire growth would extend that far from the wildland-urban interface into urban environments. However, we were wrong. So, of course, Palisades fire occurred, destroying over 6,800 homes and killing 12 individuals, and prompted a massive response from us, LA, Malibu, and resulted in the evacuation of our northern communities because wildfire risk was so severe. So in March, they revised the fire hazard maps. Now Santa Monica is in the very high, and moderate hazard zones. When we used our crisis track tool, the property damage could range from $60 million on the low end to $660 million on the high end. And one thing to note, again, with social vulnerability is the northern portions of the city have older populations and a higher population of persons with disabilities, which may be more difficult to evacuate. Okay. Climate change, you all know very well. It is difficult to measure. Climate change is prompting a lot of these events to occur more frequently, like wildfires. But specific climate change disasters are a bit difficult to quantify. The thing we wanted to stress was sea level rise, and if our risk is not abated by 2100, we could see significant damage to our coastline and the pier and a total loss of $847 million. Okay, that's the end of the doom and gloom. So again, we're presenting a 5-year mitigation action plan. Projects, proposals, planning, activities to reduce identified vulnerabilities. OEM will monitor the progress. Every year we will hold a meeting, convene all of the different stakeholders to see where they're at, what are the barriers, can we help facilitate the progress in any way. And then in the next 5 years, we'll do another update and start the whole process over again. Now, let me be clear about constraints to implementation. There is no magical budget for mitigation action items in my budget or anybody else's budget. We are very aware of the reduced capital improvement budget that the city has and how that has strained all individual departments to really incorporate kind of forward-leaning activities. Big Blue Bus or the Department of Transportation is very lucky to have their revenue generating streams, where a lot of other departments are struggling with capital improvement. There's also incredible grant insecurity and competition right now. So on the hazard mitigation grants, they have been very difficult to obtain. There are new grant restrictions, and they have FEMA has removed an entire set of grants, the Building Resilient Infrastructure Resilient Communities grants. The BRIC grants have been completely taken away. There's also challenges with staff capacity, competing public interests, regulatory hurdles, and unforeseen events. Like I didn't expect COVID to happen in 2020 when we were supposed to do our last update. Okay, so we grouped these into different items, and with time, I won't go over all of them, but planning, one of the important ones for the community was really having a robust citywide evacuation plan specific to wildfire, tsunami, and dam inundation, making sure the communities understand where they live in relationship to our evacuation plan and how they need, and so that they can build their own personal evacuation plan. Assessment and regulation, implementing red flag warning restrictions, such as no parking on certain streets in very high hazard areas or our evacuation routes during red flag days. Resilient city facility design standards is creating a system of resilient, sustainable design structures so that if any building in the city is being improved, we are going to design it like this so that it will be operational post-disaster, and we will try to mitigate the impacts of the disaster. Natural systems, we made sure to include our natural dune expansion, which is a great coastal flooding, tsunami mitigation measure, city readiness, expanding our GIS technology focused on emergency management and hazard communications, education and awareness, having multilingual, inclusive emergency communications that is mindful of various needs that are within the community so that everyone has access to emergency information, and structure infrastructure, implementing or expanding tsunami alert systems, having renewable backup utilities, microgrids, solar plus storage, and doing seismic retrofits to our water infrastructure. So just some of the highlights. But they go into a lot of detail in the plan, but I'm an unscheduled agenda item, so I'm going quickly. So this is our approval timeline. We are very thankful to be in front of you all today. We'll go to council in November. Again, the plan is to submit it to Cal OES and to FEMA and hope for the best on their feedback and that they grant us approval. One important thing is we understand that that binder is not very convenient for the everyday person to read and understand, right? It's very technical. I'm the mom of a 3-year-old. I don't have time to read a 500-page book if it's just my normal day. So we're going to take all of this information and hopefully, if FEMA approves my scope of work modification, we have grant dollars to revise it into a magazine-style format. So it's easier to read, it's accessible, people can understand the hazards and what they need to do as a family about them. With preparedness information that will be available in all of the languages that the city's identified in the language access plan. And then we will also have a website. So really trying to make sure we do appropriate outreach to the community. And with that, happy to answer questions or hear feedback.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Any questions, comments from... And remember, this was purely educational because we didn't have it agendized, so we're not able to take any actions. But questions?
Thanks. This was great. And I'll probably think of more questions, but I want to start with like a big one and then like I think a specific one. But first off, what do you do with all those numbers?
That is a great question.
And particularly since I'm not sure how much I believe them, but
Well,
what do you do with them all?
I think it's helpful as a starting point for us prioritizing which hazards we really need to plan for, what scenarios do we really need to plan for. But also as an emergency manager, I hold emergency operations center drills twice a year where I'm trying to create a disaster scenario for a team to think through how are we going to respond. And so I'm excited about those numbers on the HAZUS report, that it at least gives us a starting point to think through how would we respond to that number of casualties when we have 2 local hospitals? How would we respond to that amount of building damage with our safety assessment teams going out and having to do a building by building assessment and tag all these buildings? So I think it's at least a place that we can prioritize the hazards and then also use that information as a somewhat realistic scenario planner for our first responder community.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's great. I mean, I suppose I would just caution, you kind of alluded to this yourself, is like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is not in the immediate zero authority or impact that may actually prove to be as large or larger than some of the things you're modeling. So when you develop scenarios, you may want to include that.
And there are things that these scenarios don't take into account, right? A large special event, or there are hazards that aren't necessarily a part of our plan that could do just as much damage, pandemic, et cetera. So like there are endless what ifs. But yes, this is our starting point.
So let me ask, I mean, maybe this is just naivete on my part, but until January, I lived in a house, and now I live in an apartment. And when I lived in the house, we spent a lot of effort, like with earthquake supplies, water, making sure we knew how to like get the car out of the garage if there was an earthquake, which damaged the structure. I mean, all this stuff. And now in the apartment, there's like none of that, and I'm not sure how one deals with that. I mean, there's no place for me to put a 50-gallon water jug, and that actually is obviously totally insufficient for like everybody else in the building. No, you know, so what's if I were to read the right page in the 500-page thing, what would it tell me to do? And what does one do, or what does the city do for apartment dwellers on all the things I knew to do in the house?
Yeah, so I'm like the reverse, where I lived in an apartment for years and years and had to do disaster planning that way and just moved into a house. So, so I think looking at your 3-day plan, what do I need for the first 3 days? Focusing on the essential items that you specifically need. Medications, water is an important one. The things that, imagine going backpacking or camping for that 3 days, and really what would you need to put in your car and pack up and go, and focusing on that. The second step is getting to know your other apartment community. The strategy that we have tried to use to build resilience is, instead of thinking of disaster responses just yourself, think of it as your block, think of it as your apartment building, because so often first responders in a major disaster event are not fire and police. They're actually your neighbors. And so getting to know your neighbors, getting to know what their vulnerabilities are, and sharing that responsibility. Maybe I don't have the chainsaw, I don't know, but maybe my neighbor does, or you know what I mean? Like I'm not very good, handy with tools, but I know the person 3 doors down is, and having that shared understanding. There's a program called Map Your Neighborhood that has started that process, but really looking to how do we tailor it to those vertical neighborhoods, right, into more apartment building style. You're welcome.
Great. Judy?
Well, while you were talking,
Moore?
Lindsay, we've talked many times,
Mm-hmm.
but it occurred to me there's probably no one still working for the city who was here during the earthquake. And I'm the one who was the mayor, and I was kind of in charge of the earthquake. Not the earthquake itself, but the recovery.
That's the headline. She caused the earthquake. She caused Northridge.
And I was just thinking somebody ought to do an interview of me about all of that, and also of John Jalili while he's around.
No, that's a wonderful idea.
I just I don't want to go into why, but obviously those of us who lived through it know a lot about what worked and what didn't work.
Right. And there was a beautiful story that St. John's did a couple of years ago on their experience in interviews of staff. And so, yes, that would be incredibly valuable.
And we've talked a lot about the neighborhood and people who live in Santa Monica, but I want to talk about what it was like dealing with the federal government and the state government and LA as a city.
I will say, I'm going to do one positive thing. I have been a part of COVID response and recovery, and I've overseen the reimbursement process for that, and Palisades Fire, and our reimbursement process for that. I will say Palisades Fire was one of the better experience I've had working throughout the layers of government, and especially the FEMA reimbursement side. The staff were tremendous. One of them has been cut, but they have been tremendous. We're trying to really educate and empower the local jurisdictions. But it is not easy, and it does take someone with, if you've had experience doing that, it is much easier to navigate. It's cumbersome.
I wonder about the neighborhood aspect again, and I'll just quickly share my experience during the fires where there were arcing electrical cans, and I tried to call to report it because it was pretty intense, and the wait time to submit an emergency report was 90 minutes, and I figured, well, I mean, we're just going to burn down if
With
it comes to
Edison.
that.
Yeah.
And so what I wonder is a lot of times when we're in the neighborhoods, we are the first ones to notice something that is amiss, right? And so I'm thinking about this app that I just reported a biohazard to for the city. And I was wondering if there's something like that that's kind of in the works for this kind of thing. So that the report gets logged and not just like you got 90 minutes to sit on hold until somebody can get to you.
Well, I will always encourage you to report it to my team now. So public safety dispatchers, either by calling 911 or calling our non-emergency police or fire number. In a major disaster event, if phone lines are bogged down, we also have the ability to text to 911, where you could have a conversation with dispatchers that way. Now, in a major earthquake event, communications may be down where it's very difficult to report it that way as well. But just so you know, if you ever experience that again, please do report it to us so that we can share it with the fire department and they can monitor the situation. And we also, because OEM is with dispatch, they give us reports of what's occurring on the ground level, and then we can advocate it on the government level, right, to our government liaisons with Southern California Edison, et cetera, and try to help with prioritization. Now, the night of January 7th, there was a long list. So in terms of building out tools and reports, we have lots of different systems that are available. So like our crisis track tool is a system where we can issue public surveys and kind of crowdsource damage assessment information that way from the public. So it's an option that we can do, and we can tailor that different ways, similar with Survey 123. But also we look at a whole range of how we're going to get information from the public. And if our communication systems are down, it may be setting up information hubs, very rudimentary, go to your nearest school or library so you can get information from city staff, but you can give information to city staff as well. So while we hope to use the best technology, we also plan for not having it available.
Great. Any other questions for Lindsay? Well, thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for all the doom and gloom.
Anytime. I'm always happy to come back.
Maybe I should say thanks for all the preparation
There
and
you go.
resilience
Yes.
you're embodying.
Yes. Power is, knowledge is power. So.
All right. Fantastic. Okay, so we are now on to item 4, which is our consent calendar. The one item on the consent calendar is approval of our minutes from September 15th, 2025. And I don't believe we've seen a copy of the minutes. I don't know if I have. James, do you know if those were... Oh, okay. So yeah, I don't believe I got a copy of the minutes in the packet either. So maybe we should just push this until our next meeting when we can see them. All right. So that was easy. So now we are on to continued items, which is Ariana, Renters Energy and Cooling Heating Program Update. Yeah, REACH. Well, REACH program. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. All right. Okay. Okay, so I think you all know me, but I'm Ariana Vito in the Office of Sustainability and the Environment, and here today to talk about our new program that we're going to be launching next month that is focused on renters and helping to provide some energy resilience. And let's see. Sorry, my computer screen is glitching. Sorry, just give me one moment. Okay. Okay. Anyways, sorry about that. So I'm going to be talking to you about this program that we're launching that is funded through one of Clean Power Alliance's funding categories, their innovation fund. And so the focus areas for this funding were resilience and grid management, electrification, and clean energy procurement. And so this program kind of touches on all three of them in terms of what we're offering in the appliances, in terms of the grid management options. The three appliances that we'll be providing are portable heat pump units, air purifiers, and personal battery storage systems. And so I'll get a little bit more into the details of that in a moment, but also just wanted to frame that this also aligns with one of the strategic objective areas in our climate action adaptation plan from the Climate Ready Community category, and some of our 2030 objectives, which are to increase community resilience and protect vulnerable groups from the impacts of climate change. So we were trying to think about ways that, we can shape programs to help those in the community that may be more vulnerable. So this actually ties in well with what Lindsay was just talking about. But here's a summary of the program before I get into the details. So we have about $250,000 from CPA that we'll be using for this program focused on indoor air quality, comfort in terms of indoor air temperature, resiliency, and of course emissions reductions. And so, as I just mentioned, we'll be offering free portable room heat pumps, air purifiers, and personal battery storage systems. So applicants will be able to select up to 2 out of the 3 options. And it's an income qualified program. So similar to the e-bike voucher program that we ran last year, there'll be income stipulations, and we have a number of ways in which we can verify eligibility, but participation in the CARE or FARA or SNAP programs are just a few of the options. And we're going to be working with the implementation partners, the Energy Coalition, and also longtime city partner Sustainable Works. They'll be helping with various aspects of the program that I'll get into in a bit. And we're planning to do most likely 4 or 5 lottery rounds. So also similar to the e-bike program, we'll open up applications, interested residents can apply, and then we'll have the lottery rounds staggered over several months, just kind of to manage the workload of getting all of the appliances delivered to the residents. So we're hoping to launch next month. And we really wanted this to be a renter-focused program because historically renters have really been left out of a lot of the energy efficiency rebates and offerings that have been available just because of the structure of those programs and the logistics of what's involved. So like solar, of course, typically you need to be a homeowner to take advantage of. The Tech Clean California programs, replacing your heating and water heating, space and water heating systems. There's just very limited options for renters, particularly if you're on a central boiler or central water heater. So we wanted something that was easy, that didn't involve expensive upgrades and permits. So the appliances that we selected all just operate on 120 volt outlets. They don't require any construction or permits or necessarily landlord approval. So, and also we know that a lot of the older rent-controlled properties in the city don't have AC and historically haven't really needed it. But as I'm sure many of us have experienced, there are definitely many days where if you don't have AC and are in particularly upper units, it can be uncomfortably warm. So I also wanted to highlight a policy that was adopted by the LA County Board of Supervisors this summer, in case any of you hadn't heard of it, and it's the LA County Renters' Right to Cooling Ordinance. And so this only affects unincorporated LA County, so we aren't subject to it, but I wanted to highlight it because I think it's important just to showcase a lot of the work that has been done recently, and particularly by SAGE, the organization. They've done a lot of stakeholder meetings talking to residents about how they're navigating the heat. And of course, it's not as extreme in Santa Monica as it is in other parts of LA. But they had a lot of focus groups where people were talking about how they all, like families of 4, are sleeping in one room because that's the only room with an air conditioner and it's just too intolerable in the other rooms without AC. And so this policy that was recently adopted requires landlords to ensure that the indoor air temperature can remain at 82 degrees or lower. It takes effect beginning in 2027. It doesn't require the installation of AC necessarily. Landlords can opt for other measures that may help, like adding shading or swapping out the windows or improving insulation. And there's a number of options, and of course, a lot of nuances to a policy like this, but I just share it as in the greater context of heat and resiliency and adaptation as the climate gets warmer and as this will impact even the western areas like Santa Monica. And the program we developed based pretty heavily on a pilot that TEC, or the Energy Coalition, rolled out in Pomona. It was much smaller, so they only had, I believe it was 10 participants, but similarly, it was only focused for low-income renters, and they could choose between a number of appliances. They actually had a longer list of the offerings than we did, but we wanted to keep it focused for this pilot. But that's some of the background on that. And so looking a little bit more closely at the appliances. So if you're not familiar, the portable AC or heat pumps, so they essentially have a hose that you affix to the window, and they are heat pumps, so they can offer both cooling and heating. They're really only sufficient for one room. It's not going to cool the entire apartment necessarily, but it does offer relief, particularly on those warmer days in the summer. So this is the model that we selected. We're using our city procurement platform through a vendor called Grainger. So we're kind of limited in the appliances we could select from, but being able to use the city's procurement platform allows us to have, it streamlines a lot of the logistics of ordering the appliances, which will be delivered directly to the residents. So there's the air purifier, and then this is the portable power station, which is 602 watt capacity. And so the idea is, this could be helpful during outages, particularly if someone has important items they need to, like important medication they need to keep cool, if they want to plug in a mini fridge to it or use it for charging phones or laptops, anything like that. So those are the 3 appliances that they'll be able to choose between. And then our 2 implementation partners. So TAC will be more focused on some of the data analysis side of things. They'll also be creating some informational materials for us about the appliances. They developed an appliance catalog for their pilot program in Pomona, which just gives information to applicants about the appliances, how they're used, potential impacts to utility bills. And then TAC will also help develop and analyze responses from surveys. So we're going to ask participants to fill out a pre-survey. If they're selected to receive appliances through the program, they'll fill out a survey answering questions like, why did you select those appliances? What are some of the largest issues in terms of indoor comfort that you're experiencing? Or we have a number of other questions that we'll be interested in. And then TAC will also be advising on some of the communication and engagement. And then Sustainable Works will be helping to promote the program at existing city events. And then they'll also be kind of the main point of contact with applicants if they have questions throughout the process. So Alyssa, who was our Department of Energy fellow who ran the e-bike voucher program, she was really focused almost 100% on that program, and she fielded all of the questions and all of the communication with applicants. So Sustainable Works will be filling that role. And then we're also going to have them host a community event where we'll be listening to some lessons learned about the program, but also having an opportunity to engage with community members and just listen to their concerns or questions about extreme heat, about resiliency, about adaptation, and just to kind of learn what else we could be doing. And as we develop programs like these, what are the gaps? What can we learn and implement moving forward into other programs? And so how are we going to tell people about this? We'll go through a lot of the standard channels, like reaching out to neighborhood associations, getting on their agendas. Also, Community Corps has been a great partner for programs like this in the past. We've had meetings with our colleagues in housing and the rent control department, and they have a rent control distribution list that they said we could push this out to. We've also been in talks with the community organization Santa Monica Renters' Rights. We have the list of the previous e-bike voucher program applicants Clean Power Alliance has also said they may be able to do mailers where they can share Santa Monica customers information about the program, and then the community resilience event that I mentioned, and then our standard newsletter, social, blog channels as well. And here's our estimated timeline. So as I mentioned, we're hoping to launch next month, and then we'll do likely 4 or 5 lottery rounds. And then afterwards, tech is going to do some analysis and reporting. So on the data analysis side, we have access to all of the utility bills from customers through the Clean Power Alliance. So they're going to be able to share, with authorization of the participants, they'll be able to share utility bill data so that we can track both utility impacts in the winter and the summer based on usage, and they'll help kind of design what that analysis will look like. But we're hoping to have a interesting report at the end of this. So, and I forgot to mention the scale of the program. We hope to be able to serve about 150 residents. It depends which appliances they select, because the heat pump and battery are, of course, more expensive than the air purifiers, and they have a choice. We don't know what's going to be the most popular necessarily. So, but we're estimating that we'll likely be able to serve anywhere between maybe like 130 to 150 residents. And then hopefully we'll find additional funding in the future, whether it's grant funding or perhaps maybe we'll be able to supplement with some departmental funding if we want to continue it or tweak it. So, so we're open for any feedback on outreach or analysis or anything that you'd like to share.
All right, thank you. Sounds like a fantastic program.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Thank you so much for this presentation. I think this is a really exciting program. The first, on your question of how to support renters, I don't know how common this is, but I was wondering if in the application process, you mentioned that you could either prove that you're already enrolled in the CARE or FARA program, or you could prove your income qualification another way. I'm wondering, how many people don't know that they're eligible for CARE and FARA, and if there's a way that the application could prompt them.
We do have that.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And my second question is, I think that this is kind of like small potatoes in the grand scheme of like a whole building's energy use. If you're only able to distribute like up to 150 appliances, chances are they're not all going to be in the same building, and you won't see a meaningful energy increase. But if the program were to scale up and you were saying like a rent-controlled building that previously didn't have cooling, and almost every unit now has a mini heat pump, you could see a significant energy increase in that building. And so I was wondering if, I know that the building performance standard is on hold at the moment, but I was wondering if there was any talk of coordinating the tracking of distribution of this with that program, because that could impact like the baseline performance of a building. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But that's like not right now.
Yeah.
Not for this scale, but like if it were to scale up.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I guess, are you thinking like if, for example, a property owner chose to supply portable heat pumps rather than investing in upgrades?
Either way, their baseline energy use, I forget what year Nico is planning on using for the BPS.
Yeah, I think it will. Well, depends when it gets. I think
right.
we're delaying the rulemaking, but yeah.
Right. But, for any AC that's not in place right now, chances are it won't be included in that baseline.
Right,
and if this kind of program or other outreach spurs AC, which is great.
Yes.
And a good thing to install, somehow that program needs to be responsive to that and like make allowances,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. We'll have to think
It's something
about that.
because I've worked with Sage on a similar thing for City of LA that kind of died. But
Okay.
City of LA is also exploring a building performance standard that has
Right.
also been put on hold. And so there was a similar tension there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for raising that. I'll maybe chat with City of LA folks about that.
Good luck. I work for the city. It's
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one comment. I know a lot of the older buildings, like say 1950, they've got one outlet per room.
Yeah.
Everybody didn't have computers and printers.
Right. Right.
And some of the buildings are already up to capacity. So even if somebody wanted an electric car, they can't charge it because it would overload.
Mm-hmm.
So is this factoring in somehow in your?
Yeah,
plan?
we're going to in our informational packet where we're explaining about the appliances. We are planning to include some type of context about you might not be able to run your dishwasher and your computer and TV and this at the same time due to limited capacity. It's kind of tricky because we don't, not everyone necessarily is going to have access to their electrical panel, but it probably wouldn't hurt to check with their landlord about the capacity. It just gets into kind of a tricky area because you don't want them to get into hot water, but we also don't want circuits overloading. So, yeah, it's kind of any resident could go out and just buy this on their own and plug it in and see what happens, but we do want to provide some sort of education to prevent anything that negative from happening.
Great. Any other questions, comments? I had a couple of suggestions on outreach.
Okay.
It looked like you got a really good, robust list, and I'm sure Sustainable Works also has additional lists, but two things popped into my head. I thought I'd bring them up.
Sure.
One was, all the neighborhood organizations, they seem to have a very good connection, and most of them are renter areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then Climate Action Santa Monica has
Yeah.
pretty good connection, so those two might help out.
Perfect. Thank you. And I did also, I don't know if this happened before I got here, but if not, I wanted to introduce Fiona in the back, who is our new Civic Spark Fellow, who's going to also be helping with this program. So we're really excited to have her on the team. She'll be supporting the climate energy team with our work on building performance standards, also the REACH program. But sorry to put you on the spot, Fiona, but do you want to just share a brief or a sentence about yourself?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I recently graduated from Sarah Lawrence College in New York City, where I studied environmental science, GIS, and data analysis. And I got to spend some time working with leaders in climate change and hosting maps through their flooding chapter report. And I'm super, super excited to see what I can apply these skills to help out the city's program. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, Fiona. Yeah, we're really excited. It's going to be great. So, yeah.
Ariana, didn't you start with OSE as an intern at one point?
I did,
Way
yes.
back when?
I did, back in the day. And actually, Nico, who is going to be supervising Fiona, was a Civic Spark Fellow who is
Right.
now full-time staff. So
Great.
it's all full circle. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Ariana. Great presentation. And we look forward to hearing how it all goes next year. So we are right at the end. We've at our previous meetings, we asked that we have a future agenda planning item, which is where we're at right now. And so we have a list. I spoke with Clove before the meeting, and she laid out what we're looking at for our November 17th meeting, which is OSE staff will bring a 25-26 work plan to us for approval, where we'll be talking about what we're going to be doing, and also, I believe, a report on what we've accomplished and what we've gone over the past year. So we'll have a discussion about that. We had previously asked for a more robust and in-depth discussion about natural grass versus artificial turf. So we're going to have that robust discussion next time with several experts to help guide us and answer our questions. We're going to get a presentation on Memorial Park redevelopment and expansion, and we'll get an update on the e-bike voucher program, which Ariana mentioned. Is there anything else so that's going to be a pretty full meeting in November, but are there other things that folks want to kind of tee up for future, or, and we don't have to, we can certainly let this run. And our work plan is when we have that discussion in November is when we can really talk about future stuff we want to talk about.
When do we get to see the draft work plan? That would be
I believe, well, James can tell us.
Yes, we're working on the accomplishments from the previous year and identifying new goals for the upcoming year. So we'll once that's finalized, hopefully, if not by the end of this week, next week, we'll go ahead and email that to everybody so they have a chance to weigh in on it, provide some feedback.
In probably December or January, I think I'll want Elias to give an update on our power lighting program, another power lines program to put in microgrids at city facilities. So we're just doing sidewalks now, but Ocean Power technical feasibility reports back next month.
All right, fantastic. Great to hear. Okay, any other discussion on that item? So James, did you want to talk about the admin item?
I gave a little update on it. Yeah, sorry.
And the December meeting, was there anything you want?
I don't believe that there's anything agendized at this point right now. Okay, so we are adjourned at whatever time it is, 8:45. Not too bad. All right. Thank you, everyone.